Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be looking ahead to blank game week 28 and focusing on those top transfers that you should be prioritizing for your teams. So guys, if you are new around here, make sure you do consider hitting that subscribe button, and if you enjoy what you are watching, make sure you do drop a like on the video. So without further ado guys, let's get started. Okay guys, so first up you can see we are going to be looking at Leicester's James Maddison, a player that has a fixture in blank game week 28 and also a double in game week 29 with a favourable game week 30 fixture against Bournemouth at home. And first and foremost, I think it is worth noting that when we are making our transfers ahead of this blank game week 28, we need to remember that we can't get tunnel visioned just on the players that have good fixtures in game week 28. I really think it's important that we target players that not only play in game week 28, but also double in game week 29 to really optimize the transfers and the free transfers that you're using for this game week. And James Maddison is one of those that ticks all of those boxes. Now, I really think James Maddison would have been a player that would have been on everybody's radar if Leicester had been performing over the last few weeks. However, 4 losses in a row for them has made a lot of managers a little bit wary about the Leicester assets. At one point, Nacho was a massive conversation for us as he started to find a bit of a purple patch. But lo and behold, a couple of blanks, a minute's risk, and suddenly he is off the table. But I really do think that James Maddison remains a fantastic option in our teams. Now, as I mentioned, Leicester have been in a bit of bad form, losing their last 4 league matches, and Maddison has played 3 of those 4 games. Now, over those 3 fixtures, played 90 minutes, and he only scored 5 points. And those fixtures were at home against Chelsea, away against Southampton, and away against Man United. So I'd argue quite tricky fixtures over that period. Now, over this period, as I said, he's only scored 5 points, but the underlying data is still decent. Expected goals of 0.19 per 90, an expected assists of 0.48 per 90, 4.58 expected FPL points per 90, and 1 big chance created per 90 minutes. So this short-term sample size that we're looking at shows that even though Leicester aren't delivering, James Maddison is still ticking over really nicely in this team. And anybody that has actually watched Leicester knows that James Maddison is the best player on the park still for Leicester, and he is the one who is spearheading anything that is actually good for Leicester in these games. Now, as I said, I've read out a few stats in regards to the last few game weeks, but you can see on your screen here, these are the underlying stats for James Maddison post-World Cup, so game week 17 and beyond. And of course, he has been managing an injury over this period, so the minutes that we're looking at aren't necessarily a huge sample size, but they still match what I've been discussing about his recent form over the last 3 games. Now, I want to draw your eyes to the game week 28 predicted points of 3.4. Although we do have that predicted, I do still feel like Maddison is one of those players that any time, any game week can crop up with a double-digit haul. I really do think his ceiling is really high as an FPL option. And importantly, when we are at the back end of the season, we want these players that have that potential to be match winners and also racking up these double-digit returns. And I really do think Maddison is a player that ticks those boxes. Now, as I said, looking forward beyond blank game week 28, because that is obviously the immediate priority. Game week 29, I would argue Leicester have one of the most favourable double game weeks, with Palace away and Aston Villa at home, followed by Bournemouth at home in game week 30. So I think Maddison not only ticks a box for game week 28, but also is a long-term hold that you can do for your teams. And if you're one of those managers similar to myself who can't afford Bruno Fernandes in their midfield to target the Man United double in 29, I think moving early for someone like James Maddison in 28 and having him over the next 3 game weeks is a really good FPL move. But again, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'd be really interested to know if you share the same thoughts or whether Brendan Rodgers' kind of managerial record over the last few weeks has put you off these assets. So next up, we're going to be coming into a player who is definitely on form and on everybody's radar right now in the FPL community. Now, this man is going to be, of course, Aston Villa's Watkins, who scored another goal in game week 27 against West Ham. And he is having one of those personal best seasons if things are to continue in the trend that they are right now. And under Unai Emery, we're really seeing that emphasis of Watkins understanding that he is the main man in this team. With Danny Ings going out the door in January to West Ham, realistically, he is the only one in this team that is expected to be delivering the goals as the number 9. And we've come to terms over the last few seasons that Watkins, while he is a good player, isn't necessarily hitting the numbers to be justifying him as a out-and-out forward. But this season, we are starting to see a different side to him. And look at the touch heat maps that we have been over on Fantasy Football Fix. We are seeing him playing a lot further up and not necessarily being the one having to link the play in and amongst the midfield. So really promising signs for Watkins if you are planning on bringing him in. Now, why is he such a popular transfer going into game week 28? Well, first and foremost, similar to James Maddison, he is a player that not only plays in blank game week 28, but doubles in 29 and has a fantastic game week 30 fixture. And you see that on your screen there. I think Bournemouth at home for game week 28 is the pick of the bunch of all the fixtures this weekend, and potentially even a differential captain option if you want to go down that route and you want to swing against those Arsenal, Chelsea, or even Harry Kane captainers. Now, what I really do like about Watkins is the underlying numbers that we are looking at post-World Cup. And it's worth noting that the numbers have actually been good quite a long term now for Watkins, almost over a year period. But expected goals per 90 of 0.53 is really, really promising. And as I mentioned, with the expected assists per 90 being at 0.06, we're definitely seeing a shift in the emphasis that he has in this team where, as I said, not the one expected to make the chances, but the one to actually be on the end of these being created. And with the big chances per 90 being at 1.02 per 90, he is getting into the areas where some forwards we see pot shots outside the box. He is the one getting inside the box and scoring in the areas that I would expect long-term can actually be consistent. Now, looking at the projected points for game week 28, 5.5 is up there with some of the best of all players, not just in the forwards. And over the next 3 game weeks, 18.5 projected points is really strong reading. And it's also worth noting that Aston Villa and Watkins in particular have had a very good away record from a goal scoring perspective. So I wouldn't be too put off with this double game week away against Chelsea and against Leicester. Now, another reason why I really like Watkins is because a lot of us right now are sat there with Erling Haaland. And whereas we have got phenomenal fixtures coming up for Watkins, Haaland is one of those occasions where he blanks in game week 28, away against Liverpool in game week 29, and then returns to some good fixtures from game week 30 and beyond. And I think if you're a manager right now who maybe is looking to maybe go a little bit against the grain, I think moving out Haaland this game week to potentially someone like Watkins is a fantastic transfer if you don't have too much money saved in Erling Haaland. His fixtures with Watkins, Bournemouth, and then a double in 29 versus the one fixture of Haaland against Liverpool makes me think that Watkins can match and outscore Haaland over that period, where then you look to buy back Erling Haaland in game week 30 for maybe at the expense of Watkins, or maybe even another mid-price forward if you do own him in the shape of Ivan Toney. So something definitely to think about, guys. But Watkins is one of those transfers that is right up as a priority move for me this game week. But again, guys, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'll be really interested to know. Now, the reason why I haven't pulled the trigger yet on Haaland to Watkins is because there are 2 other forwards that have fantastic fixtures and are starting to come onto our radar over the last few game weeks. And being a Chelsea fan, I'm delighted at this. Now, of course, that is going to be the combination of João Felix and Havertz, both forwards in the game and both almost identical in prices. 7.6 for Felix, 7.5 for Havertz. But it's been Havertz that has been catching the radar of a lot of managers over the last few game weeks for some standout performances, considering he's been getting a lot of scrutiny in previous game weeks for the lack of emphasis that he's given in the final third. He is actually starting to show that he can play as a number 9 in this Chelsea team, even though when we do look at the touch heat maps, he still isn't playing in this position that we would associate Ollie Watkins being right up the pitch. He is still dropping into the midfield and linking up the play. And I think when we do look at the numbers here, they do support that suggestion. So Felix, Expected goals per 90, 0.52 since the World Cup, and expected assists at 0.09. So Felix very much being the one that is getting beyond the play and picking up some really exciting goal scoring positions. And it's only him can explain why he hasn't scored more goals for Chelsea so far this season, because he's been hitting the woodwork almost every game. But when we look at Havertz's underlying numbers, nearly called him Hazard then, flashbacks, expected goals per 90 of 0.39 is less than what we are seeing of João Felix, but still I would consider decent numbers when we do take into account Havertz has played more than double the minutes of Felix over this period. An expected assists of 0.24 per 90. So really, what we are seeing here is much more of a well-rounded forward asset in Havertz, even though from a goal threat perspective, he isn't necessarily ticking all the boxes. And you can also see the big chance he created. Even though Havertz is delivering in the expected assist department, Felix still has that part to his game, which is really interesting and makes it such a difficult call between these two Chelsea forwards, as I don't necessarily think there's one standout option for us to choose from. Now, looking at the projected points over the coming game weeks, I was hoping that would give us a bit of clarity on what direction to go for if we were planning to go for a Chelsea forward. But again, very similar reading. 3.9 projected points for Havertz this game week, 3.2 for Felix. And over the next 3 game weeks, 12.9 for Havertz and 11.4 for João Felix. So Havertz leads the way, but I don't necessarily think it is a massive gap that makes us think we have to jump in on Havertz. Now, as I touched on in regards to Chelsea, the fixtures coming up, I think, are favourable. They're one of those rare teams that actually have 3 home games in a row. Everton in blank game week 28, which I do think is a favourable fixture. But it is worth noting, somebody who has been watching Chelsea this season, I do think against the low block of Everton, it is going to be a very difficult day at the office for Chelsea with quite a low scoring affair. I think we are starting to find our form, and I would anticipate Chelsea to win this game. But I think against the low block that Sean Dyche does deploy, I don't think we're going to be seeing the beyond runs that we necessarily see from the likes of João Felix, Sterling or Mudryk. I think them spaces are going to be a lot more compact, and we are going to be relying on balls into the box and maybe some late runners. So it is worth noting that if you are considering someone like João Felix to be making those late runs into the box. Villa and Liverpool at home in a double, that could go any way. Villa are very good away from home, and Liverpool, you never know what you are going to be getting. But I really do like these as a bit of a differential move if you are not confident going for someone like Ollie Watkins. Now, I also want to touch on in regards to how close these two are in the shot department, because again, I think a lot of us, when we are considering forwards, want to know exactly how their shot volume is. And to put it in perspective here, shots in the box for Havertz per 90 over this period is 1.97, and João Felix is at 2.07. So look, these underlying numbers are almost identical when we are comparing the two forwards. Now, if I was to pick one, I probably would just favour Havertz, 0.1 million cheaper. And it is worth noting that what we are seeing from a minutes perspective, I would anticipate him to be the one to play the majority of minutes over the next 3 game weeks in comparison to Felix. I do think that Felix is one of those that could get rotated from a minutes perspective in games with the likes of Pulisic, Sterling, Mudryk, whereas Havertz, I don't think we have many options available to us to be deployed as the number 9 in this Chelsea team. So if I had to pick one, it would be Havertz, but I do think both are fantastic options for your FPL teams. Now, what I want to say, guys, before we do round off this video, is that there are price changes happening all the time. And at the time of recording, there is the potential for Watkins and Haaland to rise and fall in price. It may have happened last night, we never know. So it might be worth checking that out. And the best place to do so is to download the free app over on Fantasy Football Fix. You can check out our price predictor, and it will update you anytime a player is expected to rise or fall in price. So make sure you do check that out. All the links are in the bio. So guys, that is going to wrap up the top transfers going into blank game week 28. I really hope this video has provided some value and given you a bit of clarity on the transfers that you're planning for your teams. If you can, it would be fantastic if you can hit that subscribe button and drop a like if this video provided any value, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Take care. Cheers.